This is Hemant.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist podcast. Please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist podcast to support this show. We appreciate everyone who supports it. And if you give $5 via Patreon, you will get ad-free episodes and bonus episodes. And we have so much to discuss.
Yeah, wild week, huh?
Feels like all the dynamics of everything have changed since the last time we talked. And the funny thing is, in my list of things I wanted to talk about, none of them really involve Donald Trump. Because it's not necessarily religious, but I figured, there is some stuff we should talk about.
Yeah. I would love to tell a story about how I found out.
How did you find out about the shooting?
If you're finding your breaking news here, first of all,
it's been a week. What are you doing?
Yeah, dog. But Donald Trump was shot at and kind of hit. I don't know. I was at the Renaissance Fair with my friends, and we were sitting and watching a joust. And my friend Katie, who is from Owensboro, Kentucky, said a dude next to her answers the phone and goes, "What's up, boss? Who was shot?" And she said, I thought to myself, oh, great, I'm going to hear some real good family gossip because somebody's like fucking cousin got shot. But then she just like pulled up her phone and then she just passed it to us one at a time.
Uh-huh.
And we all just like,
oh, shit.
I think we all just like were motionless for like 30 seconds. It was just so strange and surreal. And
as we're recording this, they don't have a motive for the shooter. It seems like he was just going after anyone he could, and Trump happened to be the high-profile politician closest to him.
I feel like the main takeaway was that is a massive failing on the secret security part.
Yeah. The Secret Service, who knows what they screwed up. The guy had a gun he probably shouldn't have had access to. He's a registered Republican.
Mm-hmm. But he's never voted. He's only 20.
Yeah.
I don't know,
I found it interesting that at the Republican convention, they really, because I will say, my first thought after information started coming in is, one, glad he's a white dude.
Yep.
That would have been bad.
Correct.
Glad he's not really a Democrat.
Correct.
Because that would have been bad.
Yep. Those were honestly my two thoughts too.
Yeah. And also, it's been interesting to watch Republicans try really hard to pretend like Democrats are responsible for this.
Have they been?
Yeah.
How?
I mean, the word you hear over and over when they describe the shooting is they did it, which is amusing because, as many other people have said, Republicans are now finally using a singular they. But like, they just say they did this to him. They wanted this to happen. It's like, who's they? Because that dude, the lone dude, was a registered Republican.
Are these guys lone wolves, or are they like brought up by us? Like, you have to make your decision on your narrative.
So whatever, we're not going to talk about that guy because there's little known about why he did any of this.
No.
But another thought I had is, oh shit, they're going to just make him more of a martyr for his cause.
Yeah.
I mean, they already treat Trump like a cult leader, but now it's like, oh, he's resurrected. Like, they have even more of a reason to treat him like Jesus. One of the things that I saw online that I thought, laughing is the wrong word to use because it wasn't particularly funny, but there were a lot of Christians who were citing a passage from Ephesians 6:11, which says, "Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes." And Trump allegedly got shot at 6:11, which is, they're saying, like, look, it's divine intervention.
6:11 at 6:11 p.m.
At 6:11 p.m. their time. And so put on the full armor of God. You could stand against the devil. And like, I thought that was one-off, like some random Christian trying to make
like
a link.
Stretch even for them.
It does. And yet, Trump's campaign director, like deputy director of communications, she cited that time. She said the verse represented divine intervention, which is a weird way to describe a bullet that actually hit the guy.
Yeah.
And a different bullet that murdered one of his followers.
I think 2 people are dead now.
No, one person's dead. A couple are critically injured.
I thought somebody died since.
But also a bunch of MAGA cultists latched onto the same thing. They said that verse was, quote, fucking amazing.
Yep.
One posted a drawing of an angel standing behind Trump at the rally. There was one claiming the verse proves that we saw a miracle with our own eyes and that there are no coincidences.
I'm sure that person's family feels the same.
Right. There was a Republican Congressman, Corey Mills, who told people to go read the verse, quote, and you will understand exactly why he has been saved and why we continue to move forward. The thing about this, quoting that verse in particular, is one, there's no reason to go to Ephesians. Like
I've
I
never
went to
even heard of Ephesians.
I went to Genesis 6:11. And you know what that one says? Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. I don't know. I feel like if you actually
but
wanted
that's
to
less actionable. That's not an action.
Here's another one, Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 11. God says, this city must be punished. It is filled with oppression. Maybe.
The city must be punished.
Uh-huh. The whole city.
The whole city?
Why not?
Pittsburgh or Philadelphia? Where is it?
This was outside of Philadelphia, Butler, Pennsylvania, I believe.
Lucky he didn't have batteries up there. You know their reputation with batteries.
And some people said, well, we have to cite Ephesians because it was 6:11 p.m. Eastern time. So get it?
Brother.
Couple things about all that is one, Secret Service says he got shot at 6:12. And then I looked
Let's hear
up
that 6:12.
I looked up Ephesians 6:12. Here's what it says. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world. I don't know. I don't feel like
that one
I don't feel like
better.
that's the verse they want to cite. So
Also,
stop cherry picking the verses.
The thing immediately is this supposed to be a narrative or is it just a list of just one-off sayings, this Ephesians here?
Oh, Ephesians? No, there's a narrative in the book.
Okay.
But this is how they cherry pick verses. Yeah. I do want to play for you in just a second. I'm going to go to a different story in a second. But before we get to more people talking about Trump's ear, let's talk quickly about J.D. Vance being picked as the vice president.
Oh, I did hear that. What a twat.
That is a weird pick because Vance is from Ohio, and he's one of those, hard right MAGA cultist, anti-abortion in the cases of rape and incest. He is not a guy you pick because you want to win over people who are not already in your base. So that's weird.
Yeah.
He's getting a senator from Ohio, which, Democrats aren't really contesting Ohio as far as the presidential race goes. So he's not
strategic.
It's not strategic. Yeah. So that's also weird. And also, it's just another white guy. There's nothing wrong with that per se.
I'm sorry,
but
did
Trump,
you expect him to pick not a white guy?
Yes,
did
because
you really?
If Trump's problem is
he doesn't like
if it's a
not white
50-50
guys,
toss-up
I don't know
race.
how to tell this to you.
I know Trump doesn't like them, but if the goal is we need to win over a handful of swing voters, you could easily say, for strategic reasons, we're going to pick Nikki Haley, who we made fun of for the past several years.
Yeah.
She was in our cabinet, but then she ran against us and she was critical of us, so we're going to pick her. See, unity. If they did that,
they don't do that.
That's the smart thing to do. So they did not do that.
Kamala Harris.
Yeah, even Kamala Harris, California, you did not need, but you definitely wanted to show people that, look, this is someone who is critical of me, but she taps into a different base than Joe Biden has. I get why they did that.
The school busing story that she told, which was incredibly compelling, I think secured her the VP nod.
Sure. And so I don't get what J.D. Vance adds to the ticket in terms of strategy. He's just someone else who's a younger version of Trumpism, and that's kind of it. You're so confident you're going to win that you pick someone who's just going to be more of the same.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that it wasn't anyone else because it was the worst.
I'm glad it was bad strategy. It doesn't bode well for, the American future.
No, nothing about the RNC bodes well for the American future. The mass deportation signs. Did you see their jewelry this week?
No.
They're all wearing fake bandages on their ear.
That's so embarrassing.
Uh-huh.
On Sunday morning, I was in Lake Geneva with my friends, and we were getting breakfast at this little place, and there was a lovely family of three, a mom, a dad, 3 kids. All the women were wearing Trump girl pins. The dad was wearing a Let's Go Brandon shirt. The son was wearing a Space Force hat. And it was me and my girlfriends were all out ordering. And after we left, my friend said the one daughter was just looking at us like, is that how life can be? Because we were just having fun and being supportive of each other. And she was just gazing at us wistfully, which is sad because everybody should have good girlfriends.
Right. J.D. Vance, other stuff about him.
Oh, yeah,
he
other
used
stuff
to
about
be.
J.D.
He
Vance.
used to describe himself as a quote angry atheist. I think in college, and then he became an evangelical.
I was just about to ask.
And then he converted to Roman Catholicism. So that's where he's at now. Now he's a Catholic. His wife is brown. She's
People
Hindu.
convert to.
Roman Catholicism?
Roman-
Oh, yeah. The very conservative ones
Why
do.
would you want to do that? That makes your life so much worse. You're going to feel guilty all the time.
You're asking why J.D. Vance made a bad decision, and this is just one of many he's made in his
really
life.
What is your sense for when a J.D. Vance goes from angry, quote unquote angry atheist to a conservative Christian?
Every time
what does
they
that feel like to
say,
you?
every time I hear someone say, I used to be an atheist or an angry atheist or whatever, and then I found Jesus, the thing that Kirk Cameron tells the same story. Plenty of apologists and evangelists tell the same story. And every time it's like, well, what does that mean for you? You were an angry atheist.
Sure.
And usually what it means is I didn't think about religion at all. It was just not a thing that took up any space in my life. They were
That's
apathetic.
not what an atheist is.
I mean, yeah, to me, I'm not going to say you weren't an atheist, but I am saying like, okay, but you didn't do anything to that effect. Are you
Do you think they would have described themselves an atheist in this time period, or do you
looking back on their life?
No,
They'll
no,
say
no.
that's when I was
in
an
the
atheist.
moment, when I'm 17 and I'm an angry atheist, do you think he was using that verbiage, or do you think he just didn't think about religion?
I think he didn't think about religion.
Okay,
I think
I
most
think
of
that
those
as
people
well.
never think about it, so that it's a lot easier for them to then find God later, because it's not like they had put much thought into why God doesn't exist in the past. Because then at least that's an interesting story. How did you go from having these arguments for why God doesn't exist to suddenly none of that matters, I found God?
Yeah.
That's a weird transition. I'm
Right.
not saying it doesn't happen. But to go from I had no thoughts about it to it's very easy to fill my mind with garbage, because you could describe his political life that way too.
Sure.
He wasn't a politician, and then he realized the easiest path to success is going down the MAGA route.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing that's interesting about this guy is the whole Trump brand is, we're fighting against the elites. We're up against the powerful. It's like, well, Trump was born with money and just has been famous his entire life. J.D. Vance is someone who wasn't born wealthy, but again, this is a guy who was very smart in high school, in college. Like, you don't get into Yale Law School accidentally.
Sure.
His wife clerked for John Roberts as
Wow.
Supreme Court Justice. She clerked for Brett Kavanaugh before he was on the Supreme Court.
Sounds like she's more qualified.
More qualified and probably more MAGA than any of these people.
Really?
But also she's brown and worked, like she's Indian.
Yeah.
I don't mean that derogatorily, like I'm brown. Like she's Indian and Hindu and worked for what appears to be a very progressive law firm until this week when she quit because she's now going to be VP wife. Which is a
Whoa,
weird
that's an interesting
weird
wrinkle.
route. I
He's got a
joked about
liberal
this.
wife?
I don't think she's liberal, though, because of who she clerked for and also went to Yale Law School, which
That's
produces a lot of crazy conservative
Does it?
justices. The other thing
Why
about that,
Yale? Do you know? Just old boys club.
it's where you go if you're a smart person who wants to go into law, and if you're like, I have the ability to get into a reach school, a really good elite law school, I'm going to apply to Harvard, Yale, whatever, name your pick.
So you're saying it draws the kind of people who get into law to become successful and rich, as
Sure.
opposed to whatever goals.
I mean, there's no shortage of
no,
alums,
sure,
right?
but if they're smart enough, yeah.
What I would like to see is the WhatsApp group chat from her relatives. That's what I want to see based on her
yeah.
speech. Because
What was her
she's
speech like?
speaking
I didn't
about her
listen.
husband and what a great
How
guy
much she loves
he
how
is.
white he is.
Yeah, right.
His alabaster skin.
But there was really nothing about policy or principles in the speech. It's just, let me introduce you to the guy. And to be fair, that's her job. She was
Sure.
introducing her husband. But I'm like, I want to know what you really think. And you know what? I'm not going to get it from you. So let me see what your relatives have. Are they all trashing you right now?
Absolutely.
Because that's what that's the chat I want to see.
I mean, who among us hasn't had a family member go completely rogue
In the name of power
in
or
the
money.
name of grabbing onto power with both hands?
And the reason we're not talking about the policy decisions, J.D. Vance, like we said, opposes abortion in every circumstance. He doesn't want people to get access to the drugs that could be mailed. He's
a
horrible
monster.
on policy. He's the sort of guy you pick as a VP if you want to implement everything Trump says and not just talk about it.
So
but
with
his
JD
speech
Vance, we're probably
itself-
looking at an attack on Obergefell.
Oh, everything. It's
Yeah.
everything conservative. It's Project 2025. But like, here's a guy who has the ins to actually figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's scary.
Yeah.
He also is an election denier who says he wouldn't have certified the 2020 elections if he was Mike Pence.
Well,
you know
that's
whose name didn't
cool.
show up in his speech? Mike Pence. And I know this joke has been made also, but like, if you're taking on a job, you should always ask why the position is open. Something he has not mentioned or talked about.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
So anyway.
I wanted to go out to a nice dinner in downtown Lake Geneva, and my dad said, quote, it's going to be swarming with Republicans, which is one of the funnier things he said in a long time. But, you know,
There you go.
I really wanted to go out to a nice dinner.
I'm going to play a clip for you that made me laugh more than anything else this week, which features televangelist Kenneth Copeland.
I've heard of him.
His daughter, Terry, and Terry's husband, George. They kind of function as a group when they're preaching sometimes. And during a live stream Sunday night, this is the day after the shooting attempt, or after the shooting. The day after, the three of them were doing one of their what would you call them? I was going to say rallies, but that's the wrong word for
Like
it.
a roundup? Like
They were preaching.
Week in review?
They were preaching to their people.
Oh, okay.
And
Sermon?
one of the thing, a sermon of sorts. But Copeland, the argument they were making is that Jesus was working through Donald Trump. And to that end, Copeland cited the story of Malchus, who is a servant whose ear was cut off by one of Jesus's disciples. Why did one of Jesus's disciples cut off this dude's ear?
Because he was wearing a red hat.
To delay the arrest of Jesus before he was crucified. And then Jesus goes up to the servant. He's like, the fuck are you doing? Don't hurt someone. And then
That's
he
Psalms, I
supposedly
think.
healed that guy's ear. It was the last attributed miracle to Jesus before he got crucified. So they were talking about that story like this
Which
is...
follower did that?
This it doesn't matter. Simon Peter.
Oh,
But, like,
Simon?
Simon. No, there's different dudes. They all have the
Simon
same
is the
three
one
names.
Who sings like, you've got the
Nope,
cloud
nope.
and the glory.
I'll take your word for Joseph.
Forever
So,
and ever.
don't worry. I'm going to play this clip for you. This is George speaking, and I'll let you hear what he had to say while they're talking about all this.
We're going to pray right now over President Trump's ear and the others as well.
Critically wounded.
So let's start with him.
His ear.
Put your hand over your ear. Father, in the name of Jesus, we pray over Mr. Trump right now. And we thank you for an accelerated healing process. Lord, I thank you that Jesus healed an ear. Well, he can do it right now with President Trump. And there'll not be one sign, not one thing, Lord, that will even tell
That's
that
a
he
called
was
shot
shot
if I've
at.
ever seen one.
There will not be one sign that will even tell that he was shot at. By the way, again, like I said, Trump is wearing the bandage on his ear, which is fine, but plenty of Republicans at the RNC are also wearing fake versions of that bandage.
It's so embarrassing.
It's so awful.
so embarrassing.
Come around here and look at this picture.
It's not going to look cool is the thing. Like you put a black band around your arm. That looks dope.
Yeah. But the bandage on your ear is silly. Here's them actually holding their hands over their ears.
So embarrassing.
It's so embarrassing. By the way, George and Terry are holding their ears, their right ears. What's Kenneth Copeland doing?
Left ear.
He is holding his left ear. I don't know what that means. I don't know if he can't tell right from left, or he just wants to make sure the right side of his face can be seen by the cameras.
Or maybe somebody's talking in his ear at the same time and he's trying to listen like a reporter on the news.
But, I mean, just without even getting
That's
into
the vibe he gives
all of
me.
that, these Christians are praying for his quick physical healing as if it would be proof that God supports Trump, which is a weird way to say God allowed the
Trump to
shooting
get
to happen
shot.
and for one of his followers to die. And I'm also wondering, what are these people going to do if Biden was attacked the same way? Would they be giving this prayer? Of course
No,
not.
they would be cheering for the guy and burning him and burning Biden in effigy or something. Whatever those people do.
Yes. Oh, by the way, they also said, I don't know if this came in. This was not in the section I just played for you, but Kenneth Copeland said later that like basically angels deflected that bullet just enough for it was impossible for them to kill him. Yeah, like one, the bullet wasn't deflected. That's not why Trump was not more seriously injured.
Yeah.
But also, it still hit him. Like, what? Why are we celebrating?
He got
that?
the shot off. Also, other people died.
Right.
Also, probably a lot of people have PS.
It's just weird to watch these people try to justify something that's a tragedy, something that you would think maybe it shouldn't have happened.
It feels to me like it's more evident than ever that they have a narrative in their head and will mine the facts and incidences until those become until they find something that suits their narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So then if the narrative...
Same thing with the Ephesians 6:11 people.
Yeah. I mean, so if the narrative is Trump is the chosen one and he's going to lead us all back to whatever and Jesus wants him in office, so if that's their truth, if that's their North Star, is that Trump equals Jesus, then the 2020 election is they cannot accept that it exists.
They were trying to hurt Jesus.
They cannot accept it exists because it doesn't follow their narrative. Yeah. The fact that somebody shot at him who is a white Republican, which I'm sure they aren't going to talk about, that doesn't fit their narrative. And so we have to ignore the bad thing that happened and only focus on the good shit. And it's delusional and it is sad. It's sad to watch.
I'm going to jump to a different person who is speaking about this. This is at the RNC this week. Trump's deputy director of communications, so a high-ranking campaign official for the Trump campaign. Her name is Carolyn Sunshine.
Carolyn Sunshine?
That's her name.
Love her.
But Fox was interviewing her earlier this week about, obviously, about the shooting. So I'm going to play a clip for you here because she's going to explain her take on it. And the introduction features one of the Fox hosts, Harris Faulkner, asking her a question, and then Carolyn Sunshine is going to speak. Listen to the response to the question. Great. So first is Harris Faulkner.
People are praying for him. People have tapped into that. How does the left come against that? What are they going to do?
I think the left is godless, and I don't feel like it's harsh to say that. I actually don't say that from a place of malice. I say that as a place of just, as a woman of deep faith myself, I know how having God at the center of my own life, especially in moments like the one that we all just lived through, has an impact. And living without God, I just wouldn't wish it on anyone. But
there's your answer.
That's it? Wait, that's it?
That's the part I wanted to play. The question was, I thought, a fair one. People are praying for Trump. People have tapped into that. Basically, what are liberals going to do in response to this? Which is not a bad question. How do you criticize
she
Trump?
Asked it was definitely
foxy.
What are they going to do about it? How are they going to be the bad? It's truly how are they going to have their villain turn now?
Yeah. And the response is, well, the left is godless. As if to say liberals, Democrats can't have empathy for someone, which is such a weird way to flip that question around.
Well, my lack of empathy for Donald Trump is not based on my atheism. It's just based on just sort of my living in the world.
Last week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This has changed nothing. Also, I looked it up. Don't worry, people with psychopathic personality traits have shown to have lower rates of post-traumatic stress disorder. So Trump shouldn't have any long-term mental problems.
As if he remembers stuff for the duration.
Truly.
Yeah. This argument that the left is godless, living with God, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Get over yourself.
Not to be condescending, how old is this woman?
My guess is our age, 40-ish.
Really?
Yeah.
It just sounds like a 23-year-old, doesn't it? Of that, real courage of her convictions, really truly believes this because she's only seen a little bit of the world and had a little bit of experience.
I don't know how other people can have other ideas except for the ones I hold.
I mean,
the world revolves around me and everything I think.
Very much like it's so wild that I'm the only person in the world who has all of the correct opinions. That's exactly what that feels like. And and she says she doesn't mean it with malice, but
the left is godless is such a weird thing to say when one, Joe Biden is a devout Catholic who attends Mass every week and cites his faith in damn near every speech. Also, just
J.D. Vance is Catholic, so they have something in common.
Yeah, it's the same religion. it was fun watching Republicans try really hard not to trash J.D. Vance's wife when she's speaking.
Really?
Some of them did. Some
Tell
of
me
them.
how.
Just racist, bigoted stuff. Like, why are we letting some? There was a California GOP leader, Harmeet Dillon, who is Sikh, and they invited her to give the invocation during the RNC one of these nights.
Jesus
and she was wearing the garb to go with it, and that's supposed to be a ploy to like, hey, we're
Look how
in a
diverse we
big
are.
tent. Look at how diverse we are. And the shit she got from other Republicans, which don't feel bad for her. She's a horrible person, this
Sure.
person who gave that prayer. But again, they're just like, why are we allowing someone to pray to a pagan god on stage? It's like, yeah, I mean, these are your people. This is what you cultivated. So I don't feel bad for her. But they kind of did the same thing when they realized J.D. Vance's wife is Indian as well and Hindu. But again, going back to this woman, Trump's deputy communications director, saying the left is godless, just to give you some numbers to go with this.
Was she wearing? I'm just the Sikh one. Was she wearing like a head wrap or a turban or was she?
The Sikh woman?
Yeah.
It wasn't.
I just realized I don't know what Sikh women wear on their.
I think she was wearing like a sari that covered her head, but
Gotcha.
that's not part of the religious garb.
Got it. Okay, I was just
So,
curious.
according to a Gallup poll from last year, only about 33% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents have no religious label. Many of those nuns, as we know, still believe in a higher power. So
Isn't
this
that
idea,
about what it is on the population writ large too? Isn't it?
it's actually higher in the population at large, but among Democratic voters, those who identify with the party,
I got you. Okay.
it's only about 33%. So it's like, and many of those people believe in a higher power. So they're not non-religious, godless, whatever you want to say. And 61% of Democrats are specifically Protestant or Catholic. So like the majority of Democrats are Christian. They may be more liberal Christians, but they're Christians.
Do you think Martin Luther would be really mad to learn that Protestants and Catholics are lumped together these days?
Yes, that is all I think about every day. When we look at Congress itself, 76% of elected
joke.
Democrats are Christian. 12% are Jewish. Another 3% belong to some other theistic religion. So more than 90% of Democrats elected to Congress are religious, not godless. There is literally one openly godless member of Congress. What about Republicans themselves? Guess what? Even among Republicans, there are a small faction of people who are also non-religious. It's, I think, 12% who are openly non-religious. And again, if Trump's campaign person thinks those voters are heartless and incapable of basic humanity, I think she should say that out loud, and those voters shouldn't be dumb enough to cast their vote for anyone in the party, since the party wants nothing to do with them. That could actually make a difference in some swing states. But just a dumb, weird thing to say in the wake. Like, again, what's the theme of this week for the Republicans, at least how they're portraying themselves? It's unity.
Yeah.
It's bringing the country together after a tragedy.
So united.
And everything they've done is just, we're better than you, we're smarter than you, we're more religious and pious than you. It's just horrible stuff.
What a nightmare.
All right, let's move on from talking about Trump, because I got something for you you're going to be shocked by. Shocked. There was a deposition that was released recently, and it's basically the interview between a lawyer and someone who's accused of a crime. Sorry, he wasn't even accused of a crime for the deposition. But anyway, there was some paperwork released this week. We're going to read it, but I need to remind you what this is all about before we do, because we talked about it, but it's been a long while. There is a former Southern Baptist Convention president named Johnny Hunt. And in 2022, remember, this is like in the year after we found out there's a lot of sexual abuse within the Southern Baptist Convention, all their associated
Found out I was
churches.
generous. Had our suspicions confirmed.
Thank you. So, I mean, and what we found out is that more than 250 SBC staffers or volunteers had been charged with sex crimes against more than 700 victims. The SBC did its own investigation and they had like a private list of alleged predators that included 703 abusers, with 409 believed to be SBC affiliated. It was so bad that the Department of Justice said, we're investigating, quote, multiple SBC entities about all this. That investigation is ongoing. In May, they charged their first person in the investigation. He's pleaded not guilty, but that's still happening. But in that internal investigation, that the Southern Baptists said, like, we looked into it ourselves. This is what we found. One of the most eye-popping, like, revelations in that report was about one of their former presidents, Johnny Hunt. And what it said is that, like, on page 149 of their report, another pastor and his wife reported that Johnny Hunt, who ran the Southern Baptist Convention from 2008 to 2010, that span, had, quote, sexually assaulted the wife on July 25th, 2010, which means he just completed his second one-year term, just stepped down, and then allegedly sexually assaulted this woman. And that was the allegation in there. And what they said in the report is that he, quote, groomed the couple with flattery and promises of help in the ministry. And then they gave more details about the allegation.
Oh, boy.
Basically, what happened is at the SBC's annual meeting that year, when he was about to step down, he invited when he had stepped down, he invited the couple to spend time with his family at a beach where he was spending like a planned sabbatical. Fine, that's not weird. They grew closer, and at a later date, the woman stayed alone at a condo that Johnny Hunt had recommended to her. What she didn't realize is he was right next door. Jesus. Okay, so one night, it's just the two of them. They are alone. Their spouses are not there. Apparently, according to the SBC report, so this is all one side. This is the couple's side of the story. Johnny Hunt enters her room. He makes comments about her clothing and perfume. He, quote, asked her if she felt safe. And then it took a dark turn, and I'm just going to read what is in the report. Cue all the trigger warnings you want here, okay? But I'm going to read what's in the SBC's internal report.
Is this part I have to read also?
No.
Oh, good.
Dr. Hunt then moved towards Survivor and proceeded to pull her shorts down, turn her over, and stare at her bare backside. He made sexual remarks about her body and things he had imagined about her. During this time, Survivor felt frozen. Survivor said these were some of the longest moments of her life. She mustered the courage to ask him if she could turn back over, and Dr. Hunt said yes. When she turned back over, he began to pull up her shorts. Dr. Hunt then pinned her to the couch, got on top of her, and pulled up her shirt. He sexually assaulted her with his hands and mouth. Suddenly, Dr. Hunt stopped and then stood up. Survivor pulled down her shirt. Survivor said she did not want him to ruin his ministry, at which he responded he did not want to ruin hers. But he then forced himself on her again by groping her, trying to pull her shirt down, and violently kissing her. Survivor did not reciprocate, but rather stood, eyes open and very stiff, hoping he would just stop and leave. He finally stopped and left. Okay, unquote. That victim said that Hunt spoke to her shortly after that, like the next day, and told her he would like to have sex with her 3 times a day. It was only the next morning, after all this, that he apologized, he begged for forgiveness, he asked her to keep this a secret. And he then returned to preach at his home church in Georgia after his sabbatical was over, but then said he's going to take a break, citing physical and emotional exhaustion. And from reporting, we learned, after this report came out, he went through a secret restoration process with big quote hands that included counseling sessions with the woman that he had fondled and her husband, and then he returned to the pulpit, and no one knew about any of this for like a dozen years. And then he retired from his home church in 2019. He took on a new role as senior vice president for the SBC's North American Mission Board and continued his busy and lucrative career as a preacher and public speaker. Okay, believe it or not, we have talked about all this because this all came out in 2022. But again, all the things I just mentioned, everything that happened in 2010. It wasn't until that report was made public that we learned about those allegations. He denied it at first. Of course he did. Then he claimed it was all consensual. Then, at the end of 2022, after the report came out, he said he's going through another restoration process. And then he was declared eligible to return to professional ministry. And then he returned to the pulpit in 2023. Okay, that's the story of Johnny Hunt. Now, after the SBC's investigation brought all that to light, Johnny Hunt was very determined to clear his good name. So what did he do in response to all this? He filed a defamation lawsuit against the SBC, basically saying they ruined his life by including him in that report about sex predators because, as his lawyers said, it involved only kissing and some awkward fondling. Infidelity, sure, but not assault. And also, he wasn't the SBC president at the time. He was just a civilian, so why the hell did you people include him in your report? And they said including him was a, quote, strategic decision to deflect attention from the SBC's historical failure to take aggressive steps to respond to reports of child sex abuse and other sex crimes in its past. They also said he was merely a private citizen whose marital fidelity was nobody else's business. Which is, again, it's weird to say they're trying to cover up, the SBC is trying to cover up its historical failure to deal with sex abuse, because Johnny Hunt was the leader of the SBC. Like, we're all trying to find out who did this. It was you. You were in charge. What the hell? He's blaming the SBC, which he led, for not doing enough to stop guys like him. What the hell's that all about? Also, it's weird to me that he's filing a defamation lawsuit because he was a public figure. He was the immediate past president of the SBC. He was a hypocrite. He was part of the abuse that they swept under the rug. And like, if it's defamation, you're saying they knew it was a lie, but they said it anyway. There was no evidence of that either. So, and the other thing to say about all this is this guy has always made everyone else's sex life like the core of his own preaching. And now he wants privacy? Like, this is a guy who signed the 2017 Nashville Statement that declared all marriage could only be between a man and a woman, that all married couples needed to be monogamous, and that trans people don't exist. He wanted to defend the sanctity of marriage, and this is what he was doing in his private life. He signed a statement on marriage by the SBC's Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, written after the Obergefell ruling, which said the decision was the result of, quote, marriage's decline through divorce, cohabitation, and a worldview of almost limitless sexual freedom. Yeah. Okay. That's what happened in the past. Disturbing. Jessica's very disturbed right now, by the way.
Not happy to be here
Yeah.
right now. Do I have space for a little rant, or should I wait for a little rant?
I'll give you a second, then you can do the rant. So for more than a year now, this defamation lawsuit has just been going through the courts. I hadn't heard any updates about the defamation lawsuit. And earlier this month, basically the SBC said, give us a summary judgment. Basically saying there's nothing in dispute here. We're not arguing about the facts. Just, you don't need a jury for this. Judge, just, you have everything. Tell if it's defamation or not. You know what I mean? And to that end, they actually publicly unsealed a deposition because in a defamation lawsuit, the lawyers for the SBC can speak with Johnny Hunt to get him on record about all this stuff. And that deposition occurred in April of this year. It was then sealed because it's not for public consumption. It was just unsealed. That's the thing I wanted to talk about. Okay? And because what that transcript of the deposition reveals is kind of revealing in its own right. Go ahead with your rant while I look up some stuff here.
Boy, it's been a pretty bad couple of months for your pal Jess. And this weekend, or earlier this week, I got a really sweet email from one of our listeners through Patreon. And it was lovely. It was about, you know, what he valued, what I bring to the table. I helped change his mind about feminism and things like that. He acknowledged that I am sharing a piece of myself and there's an emotional toll. It was all things that were really nice to hear. And then he followed up and explained that while he was going to continue to donate to our Patreon, which I do appreciate, he, quote, didn't feel comfortable listening to our show anymore because of how much I blame men. And he said, did the very classic, sorry I was born this way, can't do anything about it. Why you mad at me, girl? And boy, that got me so fucking mad. I kind of couldn't believe listeners could still make me that mad. Because, yeah, men are running this show and they're doing everything they can to stand on the necks of other people. When you see shit like this, these men who preach chastity and loyalty and staying true to yourself and then do this shit, they are hypocrites and once again are protecting each other's ass. And it's happening everywhere every day. These men like Trump and J.D. Vance are using any power that they have scraped together to harm minorities, women, non-binary people, and anybody who's not super fucking rich. So forgive me if I don't have a lot of sympathy for somebody being told that their cohort is bad, but gang, I am here to tell you, you are not the main character. You white guy listening, you're not the main character of this story. And if you think that being born into the most powerful position you could in this society, a white man, means that you are what? Among your brethren. And so if I'm insulting men, I'm insulting you too. If you are not the kind of person who is using the power that you have been granted by virtue of being born with a penis, if you're not using that to make the world better for other people, you are squandering an opportunity. And if your little fifis get hurt because I am trying to point out the systemic takeover of men like Trump who want to do anything to keep women down. He brought on Pence as his VP. Pence will not be in a room alone with women. He does not believe women are full-ass human beings. They think they're vaginas that maybe walk around. So when I say fuck guys or men protect each other, which they do, if you're not part of the problem, then I'm not talking to you. The same way when Hammett talks about how shitty white people are. Hammett, how shitty are white people?
Oh, man. So.
Guess what?
So much.
I'm not.
I don't remember saying that.
Anyway, whatever. The point is, if I say, like, fucking white people are destroying shit, yeah, dog.
You definitely say that.
Like, we invented redlining. We invented, like, slavery. And, like, white men have been in charge from the jump and have done everything in their power to harm other people. And I think it is our responsibility to look back on how we've gotten to this point of where we are and realize that it's a lot of stroking male egos and this man went into a room, sexually assaulted a woman, and then his problem is people found out, and now he's going to be hurt. When
they defamed him.
Brock Turner, was that the rapist?
Mm-hmm.
Brock Turner fully raped a woman in public, and the judge was worried about Brock Turner's future. This is what I am talking about when I say men protect men. They refuse to hold each other to account because they think that means they'll be held to account. So we all have to follow the rules, right? If you're a Christian, you can't cheat, you can't drink, you can't do any of this shit. But if you're a Christian leader, well, the rules don't apply to you, do they? And so when I receive emails like this, like this person feels attacked by my observation that white men have really kind of fucked up our country pretty good recently, I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but, my feelings were pretty hurt when they overturned Roe v. Wade, and nobody seemed like they cared. Like, no men were like, oh, no, how can we fix this? They were like, I just don't have patience for men anymore whining to me. I just simply do not. Sorry.
You can fulfill the Patreon donation we just lost by going to patreon.com/friendlyatheistpodcast.
Guys, I just don't have time for. I have so much shit on my plate, and every person who is making my life worse thinks they're the main character of this story. They think if I'm in a bad mood, I'm mad at them. If I forgot to do something, it's because of them. Guess what, gang? We're all just fucking trying, and nobody's thinking about you as hard as you're thinking about you. So fucking chill out. Read a book. Read a book by a woman author. Like, truly, the moment in Lilith when she said, God said, go forth and multiply. It costs men nothing. It costs women everything. Fucking sit with that. How many women died in childbirth so men could have 1 billion children? How many child brides?
I'll ask Elon.
How many men have made their wives have 13 children so they could have their own little tiny cult? These things happen all the time. And it's funny that it's almost always men at the helm. It's interesting, isn't it? Isn't it, Hammett?
Yes. You're going to go to page 57.
I'm not very good at cold reading.
That's okay. We're going to act out the deposition,
I'm
damn
worse
it.
at acting.
So this is the deposition in which Johnny Hunt's like, how dare you say I committed adultery and you defamed me. So on page 57, you're going to go to line 5 and you're going to be the lawyer asking the questions. And I'll stop you when I need to stop you. But why don't you go ahead and let's read this section because the lawyer was asking Johnny Hunt for his definition of adultery. And here's how that exchange went. Start with line 5.
Okay, Q, parentheses, by Ms. Noakes. How do you define, quote, adultery?
Adultery is a man that is married and he has sexual intercourse with someone other than his wife.
So Bill Clinton did not commit adultery?
I don't know his story. We'll stop there. Really?
You don't know Bill
You
Clinton's
don't know
story?
Bill Clinton's story. You were the head of the SBC. You were a grown-ass adult.
Was he the head of the SBC when that happened?
No, he was in 2008. He was the head, but he was old enough. He knows.
Yeah.
So the lawyers go back and forth on this, and they get nowhere. You're going to go to page 59. The lawyers go back and forth on this, like, dude, we want to know.
Say the word, say the word, say the words.
Yeah, if you're saying it's sexual intercourse, that's what defines adultery. Well, what about Bill Clinton? Clinton famously did not have sexual intercourse, if you want to define it like penis in vagina, but he did other stuff. So does that count? And this guy's like, I don't want to answer the question. Yeah. That's a weird way to go about it.
So after 2 pages of this.
So let's go to the bottom of page 59, line 19, and let us continue this conversation.
What do you consider being unfaithful to one's spouse?
Well, to be unfaithful to me, in my heart, would have been to have gone to another lady's room. But that is not adultery.
Okay. When do you cross the line from being unfaithful to committing adultery?
When you have sex with her.
And by sex, you mean intercourse.
Intercourse, exactly.
So you could be unfaithful by going to a woman, not your wife's room, and kiss her, and that's not adultery?
That is not adultery.
Is that what you have counseled people over the years who've come to you seeking marital help?
The Bible would counsel that, and absolutely.
What does the Bible say about adultery?
The Bible speaks of adultery in the sense of David, and David had a relationship with Bathsheba, and she bore a son, but if she hadn't born a son, she still had sex, and he had committed adultery. None of that matters, by the way. Okay, next question.
What's your review on emotional affairs?
It would just be that a person had deep feelings for someone other than their spouse.
Is that being unfaithful?
It would be unfaithful, but not adultery.
So your definition of adultery is limited to sexual intercourse with someone not your spouse.
Yes. Other than that, the Bible used the word, and history will use the word fornication. We'll pause there for a second. You see why these lawyers are like, dude, what the hell are you doing? Everything is like, yeah, it was fornication. It was unfaithful.
I think
what I did was bad, but don't you dare call it adultery. It was not an affair, he says somewhere else. It was an encounter. I may have been unfaithful, but I didn't commit adultery.
I feel like Ms. Noakes has my favorite job of all time of just like, because my favorite thing to do is like make him say the thing. Make him say that he doesn't think black people are as smart. Or I need him to say the quiet part out loud.
Say the thing that you are clearly getting at.
And I have the patience of a fucking sphinx with this kind of shit.
You're going to go to the top of page 63, but the lawyers couldn't understand this. Like, didn't Hunt himself admit he kissed another man's wife? And he's like, no, that's not what I did at all. Let's go to line 8. Here's the lawyer. Go to line 5. Here's the lawyer again.
Well, you keep saying, quote, false allegations, but you did, in fact, kiss another man's wife, correct? Another man's wife. Come on.
I have never kissed her lips in my life. My lips have never touched her lips, so help me God.
Now I'm confused.
Okay, good.
Because your complaint very clearly says that the encounter with Jane Doe involved kissing and awkwardly fondling.
Because she said I kissed her forehead at a time earlier. She just didn't get the context with her husband there when they were both crying as I was offering counsel because things had fallen apart at their church. She also said on one occasion, which I do not remember, that I kissed her hand and that was a real grooming moment according to her testimony. But no, my lips have never touched her lips.
I want to be crystal clear that in her condo on July 10th, 2010, you did not kiss Jane Doe.
My hand raised to God, my lips have never touched her lips ever.
And did you not awkwardly fondle her?
Okay, I did awkwardly fondle her because she was coming on to me. We'll pause there.
Oh, boys have no self-control. They need to run the world, but they have no self-control around boobies.
He goes on to say, I continued to refuse. She continued to seduce. And we're gonna skip ahead to page 220. Oh, this is a very long
220.
220. This is a very long deposition, and it's full of this type of exchange where they're just like, just admit you did the thing. And he's like, okay, look, I did some stuff, but I didn't do
that
all
thing.
the stuff.
I have 15 minutes of power left. Am I good, or should I get my charger?
Oh, no, you're fine. You're
Okay.
fine. At one point, they're like, dude, isn't it kind of messed up that you're doing all this with a woman who's kind of the age of your daughter?
Oh, I didn't know that part.
Yeah. And so let's go to page 219.
Got it.
And let's go to question 20, line 22.
22. Think she's about your daughter's age, right? Ooh, I'm going to give this person a character now. She's going to have an accent.
And this is another lawyer says,
And what time in 2010?
at the time of the encounter, says his partner, and then the lawyer for Johnny Hunt's like, okay, so around 33 or 34.
34, is that what we're talking about? She's still...
Now the lawyer.
They're still about the same, regardless of what year.
Yeah, right.
They're in the same age range.
Yes.
And what do you think would cause a woman that much younger than you to have this attraction to you?
Well, I wish you could tell me since you are a lady.
Well, I'm just
stop there.
asking for...
That's creepy as hell. Why would this younger
What
woman
is
be
wrong
attracted
with
to you? And he's
men?
like, well, why don't you tell me?
He's literally being deposed about sexually assaulting somebody, and he's sexually harassing someone else.
Can you go to page 216? Yeah.
Oh, we're going back?
Oh, we're going back a little bit because
Okay.
elsewhere he
Dang.
does admit what he did.
Is this the highlighted part?
No, and I didn't do the highlights.
Oh.
These highlights were actually in the document originally. I'm not sure why, but this is where it gets kind of disturbing because they go through everything I explained earlier about what he allegedly did to her. Actually, go to page 217 and go to line 7. This is back to the lawyer and Johnny Hunt. So back to the lawyer, line 7.
So when you say you've never kissed her mouth, you have kissed other parts of her body?
Yes.
And after the breast fondling and the kissing, what was the next thing that happened?
Okay, and let's just be real careful to say in this very consensual relationship, this is not a tense lady. This is a very welcoming lady.
What was she doing to indicate that she was consenting to this sexual encounter?
Enjoying it.
And how did she indicate that?
By no resistance whatsoever, no frowns whatsoever. Keep going.
Are you really making me read this right now?
One more line.
Was there any talk back and forth?
I don't remember a conversation. She's a very quiet person. This is how this guy
It's the second time my
explains-
fight or flight has been set off
I
during
apologize.
this very podcast.
This idea that this man is basically claiming she had enthusiastic consent because she put up no resistance and basically had a blank stare on her face.
Oh, buddy,
as
he
any,
doesn't know what enthusiastic consent
Uh-huh.
is.
As
he
any
just knows
expert-
that consent is not physically beating you off.
Yeah. And
Not
as any,
when I say baiting
I
you off.
got you. As experts will tell you, many victims believe that pushing back in the moment could only make the situation worse.
I'm sorry, as a young person, I was told to just wait for it to be over. If this happens to you, just don't fight back. Wait for it to be over.
Yeah, so they conclude
Because
that
you
giving
know
the
what they
attacker
do?
what
If
he
you
wants.
fight back, they kill you.
Right. And so they conclude that giving
Hey,
the
guy
attacker
who
what he
wrote in,
wants
this
is
is
the
why I'm
safest.
afraid of men. Because I was taught as a child that when inevitably you get raped, just wait for it to be over. And guess what? I had to do that 2 times. 2 times. Go ahead. Keep going.
Thank you. The song, thank you. Hunt treats that as consensual. So in short, this guy says there was no adultery involved because he never had intercourse with his victim. Sure, he fondled her. He touched her. He kissed her breasts.
This is the guy
But he says
who
it was all
plays,
consensual.
like a fun drinking game, and every time somebody says something, he's like, technically, I didn't spill the beer, just a drop fell out, so I don't have to do anything. That's this guy.
This is the guy who was the moral authority for the Southern Baptist Convention, the largest Protestant denomination in the country for 2 years, and has spent his entire career as not just a preacher, but as a traveling preacher who gets paid to go to other churches and tell them about
And
how to
harass
be
their
a
women.
good Christian, right? So remember, the SBC investigators, why did they include that story in their report? And one thing they wrote in that report is, we found the victim's explanations to be credible and not his. That's why we're including that in here. His argument now is that his inclusion in that report basically made him a pariah. He got canceled, basically, from the SBC. But even that's
Because of the
not
report or because of his actions?
because of the allegations of what he did.
Because obviously it's not his fault.
Right. Of course
It's never
not.
his fault.
By the way,
It's her fault.
elsewhere in here, they were like, so you basically, I'm not going to read this part. They said, you're claiming we defamed you or something because you got canceled because of these allegations. Well, do you
Because of
still,
your actions.
Because of your actions. Do you still speak at churches? And he basically said yes. And they're like, how many days in 2023, after the report came out, were you booked or on the road for speaking engagements? And he said, probably 24 Sundays of the year and then the 3 conferences. Actually, there were 2 other conferences as well. And this year, 2024...
So 30 weeks. So like most of the weeks.
Yeah. And then he's already done 5 men's conferences this year. So, like, this guy, this is like Louis C.K. level cancellation. I'm going to ask you one last thing here. Go to page 46. Because at one point here...
Did you read this whole thing?
I had a lot of time to read through this whole thing. There was one part
46, you said?
on page 46 where they were like, you speak at a lot of men's conferences, don't you? Like, what do you talk to them about? Because, like, you have very bad ideas about everything, right? So on page 46, just ask question line 11.
How do you come up with the themes or topics you cover in these conferences?
Being a man.
And did you deal with a lot of topics about lust,
Yes.
temptation,
Yes.
adultery?
It probably came up. I don't know that I just wrote a message on adult. Like, don't ask me about this.
Did you ever
Being a man makes him an expert on all things involving any male thoughts. And don't you dare use the word adultery.
Did you ever preach at Woodstock?
It doesn't matter. That's another
What's
men's conference.
Woodstock?
It's a men's conference.
Do they smoke a lot of weed?
I mean, secretly, sure.
Yeah.
So, like, look, I don't even, like, the crime, the alleged crime aside, if this guy wasn't some anti-LGBTQ preacher who made sexual ethics a focal point in his personal ministry.
Am I done with this
Yes.
computer?
Maybe this would not have to be a big public story other than the crime part of it.
Yeah.
But I would argue it has to be taken seriously because if the allegations are true, that's very serious. And again, he used his religious authority to gain this unearned trust from another woman. But again, the takeaway here, this is how this guy is defending his actions. Look at the way he's just going around he's trying to like parse the words. It depends on what your definition of is, that sort of thing. This is the guy who has always pushed this false idea that a Christian ethic means taking the moral high road. And this is what he's like as a Christian in a position of authority. It's just an excuse to cover up bad behavior. He acted like his marriage was worthy of praise while treating, by the way, monogamous same-sex couples as if they were being led by the devil. Like, and he's obviously not the only Christian leader to be outed as a hypocrite, but say what you will about like Ted Haggard, Jerry Falwell Jr., who had their reputations destroyed for kind of similar reasons, they were never accused of assault.
That's a good point.
This guy is so dead set on making sure this story stays in the public eye by making the worst arguments in his defense.
It's just so exhausting. And also, I feel like something I lose sight of a lot, especially when we're talking about like the relative moral failings of politicians, is that, oh, God damn it, I lost my train of thought. Motherfucker.
That's okay. They're all the
I
worst.
wandered too far in the... Oh, no, I got it. Okay. Sorry, everybody. It's been a hard couple of weeks.
Making you read depositions is not helping
Yeah, this
at
is
all.
not really great for my mental health. When people talk about, he had a lapse in judgment or blah, 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 that's fine. I don't think these people deserve to get maybe like the death penalty or anything because I don't believe in the death penalty. But I also think that we should hold people in power to a higher standard than just a regular citizen.
Right.
So I frankly don't care.
Especially when the core of his message is
this.
the opposite of what he did.
And I just, so even if he's telling the truth on its face, which he's obviously not, about the adultery is kissing versus like penis and vagina action, either way, he's admitting to stepping out on his marriage. And
that's why you should look to him as a moral authority.
yeah, like why isn't every single person saying, well, I guess he can't walk the walk, so why were we going to let him talk the talk?
Again, this is the same argument we've talked about with white evangelicals and conservative Catholics supporting Donald Trump, because they just don't care. They don't care who he slept with. They don't care about the divorces and stuff. And again, I don't care about the divorces either, but I'm not the one acting
care about the
like
rape allegations.
I do care about that. They don't.
Yeah.
Again, if they're so insistent, like, because when Bill Clinton was in office, they did it, where they were like, we need a president to be the moral center of the country, and that's why he needs to be impeached, and that's why he needs to be out of office, because he's not upholding the standard. Yeah. But Donald Trump, whatever, it's a man's private life. Let him do whatever he wants.
Yeah, it truly, this letter writer earlier really called me out for saying that men protect men, but gang, go listen to the last, how many episodes do we have? 400? 300?
This is episode 2.
Go listen and just count how many stories I've had to listen to at my own kitchen table about men absolutely ruining a woman, multiple women's lives.
That was the old name of the podcast.
And just like moonwalking away with their livelihood. It's just men protect men. I'm sorry. I don't know how else to phrase it that won't hurt your delicate feelings.
Yeah.
But maybe you can start by calling out men in your space or protecting women or, just something crazy like that. But by all means, complain to me that you're the real victim here.
I figured I would give
I'm
you
the person
one
who's going to save you.
somewhat happy story. More than a dozen congressional Democrats, led by Representative Jared Huffman, the only openly humanist member of Congress, they are now asking the IRS to investigate why groups like Family Research Council, which is a nonprofit organization that's also a right-wing hate group, why are they allowed to be classified as a church or as an association of churches and get the perks of a church when they're not a church? And
before we dive in, could you give me like a high-level overview of the difference between a nonprofit and a church?
Yes.
Do you know?
So basically, here's the deal. Here's what you need to know to make sense of the IRS
in American
for this
law.
stuff. Yeah, in American law. All nonprofit groups are tax exempt by the U.S. government, meaning if you make a donation to those organizations, and we want you to make a donation to them because they're not in it for the money. They're nonprofits. They work for a cause.
They criminally underpay their staff because they tell them that they're doing a good cause. I love nonprofit organizations.
But we want people to give money to nonprofit groups. So we say, if you give money to them, we're not going to tax you on that money. It's tax exempt. So that incentivizes people to give to them for, theoretically, the betterment of society. The catch is those nonprofit groups have to file what's called a Form 990, a Form 990 with the IRS every year. And what that document explains is, here's how much money we took in, here's how it was spent, here's how much our top staffers made in salaries. And these are public documents. Anyone can look them up. It allows the public to keep tabs on whether nonprofits are really living up to their stated missions, or if they're wasting all their money on stuff you don't believe goes toward the cause, in which case maybe you don't want to give to them. Now, what's important is those rules I just said do not apply to churches, even though churches are nonprofits.
Okay.
Churches do not have to fill out the 990s. They do not have to make this information public. This is why if you say, how much money does Joel Osteen make in his Texas megachurch? We don't actually know.
There's just no way of knowing.
Unless he says it out loud.
Closed.
Because the church elders decide, and then they keep it a secret. Their congregations may not know how much a megachurch pastor makes. Yeah. We also don't necessarily know how much of the money goes right into their pockets, how much goes toward mission trips or whatever. Now, some churches will say, this is how much we spent on it.
But that's their choice to be transparent.
That's their choice,
and so probably the ones who aren't being transparent are the ones who should be being transparent. Yes.
And so, this is the dilemma. We're counting on churches to do the right thing and be transparent, but a lot of the biggest ones are not even to their own congregations. And there's no problem with that under the law because they're still tax exempt.
Right.
Now, even beyond that, churches are less likely to be audited by the IRS. That's actually something that happened several years ago because churches made a big stink about like the IRS is being weaponized against churches. I forgot which year that happened. I can't remember if it was during the Obama years or after that. But one of the ways they fixed that is they said, look, if we're ever going to audit a church because we have questions about it, it has to be, that investigation has to be signed off on by like a high-level Treasury official.
Really?
Yeah. So like random low-level IRS agent who might do audits of regular people, they can't investigate a church anymore unless the bigwig at the top says, yes, I give you permission to do it. That's like getting your boss to sign off on everything you do as it relates to churches.
Wait, why do we have a situation where churches can exist completely without transparency? Like, is it like was the original thing like we just don't want to be?
Good question. I'm not sure why. I'm sure there was a fight about this.
That whole thing needs to be overturned and just everything needs to be pretty transparent.
I mean, there has been a case to be made. I think FFRF, Freedom from Religion Foundation, has filed lawsuits saying like, well, we're technically like a ministry of sorts.
We meet once a week.
And like, you should treat us as a church. And I can't remember how successful they've been with that in the courts. But anyway, this is the system as it stands. So over the past few years, here's what's been scary. A lot of Christian nonprofit groups that are like, we're focused on the family. We have our views on gay marriage and abortion and all that. But clearly, it's a nonprofit. Planned Parenthood is a nonprofit. They have views on a lot of these issues. They work towards those ends. But if I said focus on the family, that's a religious nonprofit group. Over the past several years, they have told the IRS, hey, we're a church now. Call us a church. And the IRS has said,
sounds good.
Yeah. And they've made
good,
those changes. Remember, there was a John Oliver segment, it's almost been a decade now, where it was about televangelists, if you look it up on YouTube. But his whole thing is, we looked up, how do you become a church? Because all these televangelists are getting away with this shit because they say you're giving money to our ministry and no one can see how much money they're taking in or spending because they are classified as a church. So John Oliver said, we're going to create a church. And one of the things he said is that the IRS actually has a list of rules for what defines a church. There's 14 bullet points. Those include you have to have like a distinct religious history, literature, an established place of worship, regular religious services. And the reason that John Oliver's segment went viral is he's like, well, we meet in the studio audience every week.
Yeah.
We have like a head. That's me. We have regular services. We have ordained ministers, because I can just declare all of you religious ministers. And he made his own church, right? Focus on the Family did this without trying to be funny about it. They said their employees were ministers, that their members were the congregation, that their cafeteria was a place of worship, that the board of directors were the elders, that the president was the head deacon, that its radio shows were an extension of the congregation. And the IRS said okay in 2016.
I'm sure I made this joke in 2016, but does that mean we can make this podcast a church?
I mean, the thing is, probably. But again, we're not a nonprofit to begin with, so we're not trying to even hide anything,
for-profit,
right?
baby. We're rolling in that podcast money.
Not after your rant. So the thing is, it's not just Focus on the Family. Liberty Counsel has done it. And Focus on the Family, to their credit, which I don't say very often, they have released their 990s every year on their website. So fine, good. They make way too much money.
Obviously.
Liberty Counsel, another right-wing hate group, they've been a lot more secretive. They have not released a 990 since 2017 because they don't have to, because now they're a church.
Good.
According to the watchdog website Ministry
we need
Watch.
less oversight on them.
I know, right? The watchdog website Ministry Watch, in 2020, they released a report saying this is a growing trend. They said among the 50 largest Christian ministries in this country who have now declared themselves to be churches, they include Campus Crusade for Christ, or now Cru, the Navigators, Gideons International, the Bible in Hotel Rooms people, Billy Graham Evangelistic Association,
An association is a church.
Yep.
Associations are nonprofit.
They also include the ministries of Joel Osteen, Benny Hinn, Creflo Dollar, Kenneth Copeland. These are all televangelists or evangelists who have giant ministries, and they're like, just call us a church. And the IRS said, okay. So the
Are there
reason...
any tax lawyers listening who can just like help us just suddenly make a lot of money? I don't know how taxes work, but it seems to me if you're rich, you can just tap into the IRS and get a lot more money. And I would love to learn about that process because I am interested and would like to subscribe to your newsletter.
In 2022, Democrats in Congress, again, led by Jared Huffman and some of his colleagues, they told the IRS, can you look into this, please?
Yeah.
40 House Democrats sent a letter to Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, and the IRS Commissioner at the time, Charles Rettig, basically saying, can you just look into your own rules about declaring churches churches and then enforce them? Because you're clearly not. They specifically cited Family Research Council. Here's the letter from the Democrats. FRC claiming to be a church strains credulity. FRC is one example of an alarming pattern in the last decade. Tax-exempt organizations should not be exploiting tax laws applicable to churches to avoid public accountability. This is what the letter said. Very sensible stuff. FRC chimed in saying they're trying to silence us.
Yeah, we sure are. I mean,
Tony Perkins,
personally
the president of the group, said they want to silence all religious organizations. Tony Perkins said, we are not a church. We didn't say we were a church. What we are recognized as is an association of churches because we work with churches. Family Research Council said, basically, we have 15,000 churches that are probably on their mailing list.
To know that that's not the same thing.
I think he said, we have all these representatives of churches who are on our mailing list, because when you sign up, you have to tell them what church you belong to. Mm-hmm. And he's like, see, we have 15,000 churches we work with. And so we're actually kind of an umbrella organization for all of these, even though they are not. They just have them on their mailing list. And this is his excuse, see, we're an association of churches. And then the IRS responded to the Democrats.
Oh, good. I would love to hear
what they said. In 2022. And basically,
that means it's bad news. It was 2022.
They basically said, don't worry, we're all looking into this. Everything's fine. We'll do our job.
Smash cut to 2024.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I've never seen him roll his eyes like
I know,
that. You're not an eye roller.
It was a dumb letter. So this week, Jared Huffman and another handful of Democrats sent a follow-up letter to the new IRS commissioner, Danny Werfel, basically saying, okay, you know what? You didn't help last time. This time we have specific questions for you, and I will paraphrase.
Oh, boy.
What changes has the IRS made when it comes to groups applying for church status to make sure non-churches don't sneak through? Question 2, how does the IRS investigate if a potential church qualifies as a church? On that bullet point of 14 things, do some of those count more than others or what?
Yeah.
Number 3, what other tools do you rely on in assessing whether a church is in fact a church?
Besides their word.
Yeah. Number 4.
Besides trust me.
What other groups, like Family Research Council, have claimed to be a church and then stopped filing their 990s? Number 5. Do the current IRS rules for churches prevent abuse of the system? And if not, what changes do you need us to make for the sake of public accountability? Tell us what laws we need to pass to help you out.
Good for him.
So those are the questions. Those are good questions.
That's outstanding.
And again, all of this is they're not trying to shut down churches. They're not silencing anybody. They're saying you guys have to play by the rules too.
Yeah.
It's a fair question. I like it. I appreciate that Huffman's doing it. So yay. Nothing will come of it, but I appreciate that they are trying.
Do you know if we have a lot of British listeners? I feel like we don't.
We have 7.
Okay. I know we have a few Australian ones. I just have a question for y'all. I've been watching a lot of Taskmaster, and it seems to me the UK has a whole thing about shaming people who avoid their taxes. It's one of those, you just hear it once in a while, and so-and-so didn't pay their tax. And it's I don't know who that is. I really wish we had that kind of culture in the United States of taxes are for us all. They are to help the community. And if you don't pay taxes, you're a big old dickbag because what are you hoarding that money for? Smaug.
I do like that.
So I would just like to hear if any British listeners or people who know more about this than me, what sort of the backstory of that is. And I'm just very curious to hear about it because it's clearly such a different, like we are all about Cayman Islands accounts and offshore accounts and making sure we pay as little taxes as possible while our roads literally fall apart as we drive over them. So I'm just curious how we can sort of get that shame machine. I mean, the British are classically really, really influenced by shame. So I don't know if we have almost no shame here in the United States.
None whatsoever.
So I'm seeing some speed bumps ahead, but I'd still like to get this thing going.
I have another happy story for you.
Oh, I thought
a
we were
couple
done.
of weeks ago, remember Ryan Walters, the Oklahoma superintendent of public instruction?
We talk about him literally every week, and
Yes, we
I
do.
remember him
He
every week.
said at a Board of Education meeting that everyone has to use the Bible in the classroom. He said every
Just all the
teacher,
time?
all the time, every teacher, every classroom in the state will have a Bible in the classroom and will be teaching from the Bible in the classroom. That's what he
math
said.
is going to be like, if Noah's ship was 500 cubits by 200 cubits, how many square cubits?
Something like that, yes. And then he released a memo that actually put in writing what he was saying, and it didn't make anything better. He said the Bible. He said the Bible
You
would
mean
be
clarity
referenced.
didn't help?
I know. He said, "Why would we reference the Bible? Because of its quote substantial influence on our nation's founders and the foundational principles of our Constitution." He then said, "Adherence to this mandate is compulsory, and immediate and strict compliance is expected."
It makes me so mad when they always talk about the Founding Fathers as if they give a shit what the Founding Fathers actually thought. They only care that they're rich, white, landowning men, and they're like, yeah, that's me right now, dog. I want to keep that. So whatever they had going on was
Now,
great.
we talked about this a couple weeks ago. We also pointed out that the state's attorney general, who has actually weirdly been
chill,
good
right?
for
Yeah.
church-state separation.
And he's Republican, right?
is
But it's still
Republican.
like, Doug, no.
He put out a statement saying Bibles are already permitted in schools and allowed in instruction if a teacher basically sees fit.
Which is insane.
Which, I mean, that's true. If you want to use it in literature to point out parallels or to make sense
I'm
of it,
just waiting for the
you can.
geography teacher.
Yeah, like, so the implication was that don't listen to the memo, it's stupid, you don't need to, but they didn't say that out loud. They just said the Bible's
Sure.
already used, so there's nothing for us to do here. No lawsuits have been filed because no one's had to do this yet.
Because it's compulsory, right? But what, or...
What's compulsory? What's the penalty? When school hasn't started yet,
often?
what are you going to do?
How often do I have to use the Bible?
all
Is
these
it every
unanswered
day? Do I
questions.
have to like set it up on the front of my classroom?
Right. So this week, or maybe late last week, the superintendent of the Norman, Oklahoma Public Schools, which serves over 15,000 students, it's one of the largest districts in the state. His name is Nick Migliorino. I'm just going to call him Nick. He did an interview with the local paper where they asked him about all this, like, what's your district going to be doing? And here's what he said. Here's Nick. I'm just going to cut to the chase on that. Norman Public Schools is not going to have Bibles in our classrooms, and we are not going to require our teachers to teach from the Bible. The standards are clear, and our curriculum is very clear, and we're not going to deviate from that. I don't know. I'm just going to be direct on that one. We're going to follow the law. We're going to provide a great opportunity for our students. We're going to do right by our students and right by our teachers, and we're not going to have Bibles in our classrooms.
You ever seen Parks and Rec?
Nope.
This guy has real strong Brandanowitz energy, and some people are going to think that's very funny, but it's true.
So the newspaper then went back to Ryan Walters, and they're like, so what's your response to this guy? A spokesperson for Ryan Walters
He
said,
drove down in a chariot with a flaming sword.
here's the response from the office of Ryan Walters. Oh, yes, they will. Literally, 4
It doesn't
words.
say oh.
Oh, it says oh. It's 4 words. Oh, yes, they will. Which takes us back to Walter's comments and his memo. Because
When he said, I know you are, but what am I?
it's all talk, but
I am
nothing
rubber,
more.
you are glue.
Like, the reason a superintendent can confidently say, I'm going to ignore whatever Ryan Walters is doing, is because he has no ability to push his plans through. There's no law saying they got to do this. He can pretend otherwise.
I'm so
but at the end of the
happy
day,
about this.
Walters can't do anything. It's not like he can fire the superintendent. He doesn't have that authority. That's not to say these superintendents are getting off scot-free. We don't know what the other
I don't know their
Republicans
lives,
in
but
Oklahoma
this guy
will do.
is
Like-
really doing the work.
The Frontier, which is a nonprofit journalism outlet in Oklahoma, they said Walters has no authority here. Like, the state's Board of Education can revoke teaching certifications if teachers don't follow the law, but the memo isn't a law.
Yeah.
And state law says instructional materials and curriculum decisions are determined by the school districts themselves. And that's what another legal group sent to every superintendent in the state, that Walter's memo is without legal authority. So it's an ongoing thing here where this is the first superintendent I've seen actually take a direct swing against Walters. But as the school year starts up again in the next month, more of them will either speak out or because they're going to have to say something.
You know what? It gives me shades of like a 3-year-old selling like crayon tickets to your house. And so anytime guests come over, like, you have to pay me $1 for this. And then the parents come in like, you don't have to do that. Don't worry about it.
Go.
That's genuinely what it feels like. It's like, let her have her little parade. Like she's always going to want to do this little parade and she's going to wear this tiara. You just have to say, oh yeah. And then we can just like get on with the martinis.
If Trump loses the election and Ryan Walters is not going to be the next Secretary of Education, all of this shit ends, I think, relatively quickly because he'll have to find something else to do.
That's a big if.
Big if. I will say, separate from all that, I do hope Biden steps down.
Yeah, I think I do too at this point.
I was surprised by how many Democrats I know are not of that opinion, but I find a very high upside despite the risk if he steps down.
Yeah, I just, for my own mental health, I've been really keeping news at an arm's length distance because otherwise I think I would like drown in my own emotions.
Glad I can depress you every week.
So yeah, up until like Leslie was the one who was finally like, even my mom says like he has to step down, and as goes Cheryl, so goes the country. That's what we always say.
I got one last story for you. This one's quick. This one's quick.
Just said we have one last story for me.
This is your last story. There's a mega church in Kentucky, Lex City Church, Lexington.
In Lexington?
And they announced last week that they were going to shut down for good. I'm just going to read you a portion of their statement on Facebook. Church family, today we're writing a letter that no leadership team desires to write. Through thoughtful prayer and heartfelt tears, the leadership team of Lexington City Church has voted to permanently cease our ministry due to the continued effects of the financial situation our church inherited several years ago and the impact of the ongoing investigation of a former staff member. We have lost the ability to remain financially viable and fulfill our God-given mission. So it goes on for a while. That's all they said about it.
Okay.
Then I was like, wait. Back up for a second. Ongoing investigation, you say, of a former staff member? Tell me more about this. You know what the reason is? The actual reason they're shutting down is because earlier this month, their former pastor, Zachary King, was charged with, let me read this off the thing.
Oh my God, how long is it?
Quote, first-degree rape, third-degree rape, first-degree sodomy, third-degree sodomy, first-degree sexual abuse, and procuring or promoting the use of a minor by electronic means, unquote. Or to put it in English, the court documents say this guy admitted to sexually assaulting a 15-year-old child repeatedly since the start of 2023 at his home, at the kid's home, and at church. And they sent pictures to each other on Snapchat and WhatsApp. And according to the local report, he was actually confronted about all this by church staffers who, as far as I can tell, knew nothing about this. He was confronted about it. He resigned. And then secular authorities came in and arrested him. I don't quite know the timeline there. But like the church's YouTube channel showed this guy preaching as recently as March. So all of this shit went down real fast. And I want to be clear. I saw nothing to suggest anyone else at the church knew any of this was happening. As far as I could tell, they took action as soon as they found out anything was happening. It may even be possible they're the ones who let police know about all this if it wasn't the family. But to be clear, why is this church shutting down? It's not because of shame. It's because it costs
a lot of money to sexually assault children.
It's because this guy's arrest led to donors and members of their congregation basically ditching the church in spades, and now the church has no money left. But I looked at the church's website, and they said, you guys, we would absolutely remain open. They're implying this. Like, when they say we've lost the ability to remain financially viable, that means we'll totally stay open if you give us money. You know what I mean? Which is a weird way of confronting. I just want to read to you again.
A little bit of a threat.
What's their statement that they said? Due to the continued effects of the financial situation our church inherited several years ago and the impact of the ongoing investigation of a former staff member.
So those are two different things.
Those are two different
things.
things.
So they both had
And they
somebody
called-
run their finances shittily and a monster on their staff.
Yeah, not just a former staff member, because that's like low end of the totem pole, anybody.
Sure.
This is the former like executive pastor of the church, which...
I swear to fucking God.
By the way, I was also looking up this guy. The church has started scrubbing the internet of his old sermons and
but the
references
Wayback
to him.
Machine.
The Wayback Machine, Internet Archive. Thank you very much. My favorite one, though, there is a group that's kind of like a headhunting firm that connects churches with potential pastors to lead it.
Are they
And-
usually pastors who have been kicked out of their own church due to sexual assault?
Not
or
quite,
other?
but there is a group called the Vander Bloemen Search Group, which is a firm that does all this stuff. And they had a page saying under the results tab, like you want to see how good we are, look at our results. They had a page on there from the Metropolitan Baptist Church in Houston that basically said, like, this company, they're unbelievably well connected with people in the church and people who know people. This is the only approach to place a key staff member. And they quoted a student pastor named Zach King, who said,
Piscadio.
throughout the process, they did an excellent job assessing my strengths and the fit with this church. I've been here 3 years and I couldn't be happier with the team I'm on.
I found a concubine, and that's going great
Yeah.
for me. She's almost 16, so I'm going to have to turn her in for a younger model.
And again, there's no evidence this guy did anything, though now that at this other church.
Oh, okay.
Like, there's no reason to believe that, but I found it interesting that the headhunter search firm is like, let's remove his blurb on our website.
Jesus Christ.
My favorite response to all this came from Linda Blackford, an excellent columnist for the Lexington Herald Leader. Here's what she wrote about all this. She described the allegations against this guy, the charges that were filed about Zachary King, and she wrote, "Not a drag queen. Nope, that was clergy. Yet again, someone, usually a man, in a position of power in a church, has once again been accused of abusing their power, their Christianity, and their congregants." Which,
That's
yeah,
pretty good.
it was.
I mean, that truly is, it's so wild to me that they are so like, gotta protect the children. Okay, groomer drag queens. And
Yeah.
then it's like, this guy literally anally raped a 15-year-old girl. And it's like, well, she
And
was
they said-
definitely asking for it.
And they said he was a former staff member, which makes it sound like he worked here 10 years ago. Buddy, he worked there like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, or something. That makes it sound like they fired him a long time ago and only recently did he do something horrible. Like, no, that's not what happened. He was doing this at your building.
Truly, the axiom of those who crave power should never be the ones who get it just could never be more true than in the year of our Lord 2024.
And that's a good wrap up about JD Vance.
Oh, boy.
And with that,
Fuck, man.
you can support this show by going to patreon.com/friendlyatheistpodcast. You can leave a
We have
review.
a bonus. Oh, yeah. There was no new reviews. If you guys want to.
Leave a review. You can go to
Or
our
send
Discord.
me a long, scathing email and it'll ruin my week.
I'll do it tonight. And what are we talking about in the bonus?
I already talked about men. That was my first.
I'm not writing down
That was
men.
my first note.
Uh-huh.
I was trapped in my Barnes tornado shelter on Monday night.
Nice.
In a pretty undignified way. That will be pretty
right,
embarrassing
all
for me to
right.
talk about. I wrote Jesus Christ Superstar JCSS, but I thought I wrote just my own name, just Jess. And so it's like, what the fuck? Just how cool I am, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Did I talk about the community theater production Jesus Christ Superstar I saw?
No.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay, you'll talk about that.
Yeah, the Judas was outstanding. If it's still running and you can get to downtown Naperville, the Judas was so fucking good. I couldn't believe it. Okay.
I started watching a TV show. I will tell you about it.
Did you? I'm reading a book about John Wayne Gacy, which I think I talked about. Not John Wayne Gacy, the BTK. I'm so sorry. That's very embarrassing.
Serial killer dudes.
And yeah, I just have some cool hobbies. I don't know why I'm depressed.
All right.
But I just read a whole thing about how he murdered somebody in a church and then explained to people how he didn't desecrate the church actually. So I would love to retell that anecdote.
Excellent.
And then I was at the Ren Fair and in Lake Geneva with 3 of my closest girlfriends. And it was just truly one of those magical weekends that we kept saying we were manifesting it. Like, we're going to manifest the perfect day. We're going to manifest the perfect weekend. And it worked.
There you go. All right, we'll see you all next week.
Bye.